The truth is that Brown versus Board of Ed isn't just about our history, it's about our future. Because while that case was handed down 60 years ago, Brown is still being decided every single day.
The triumph of the American dream is largely hailed in its roots as a melting pot. However, ideals of diversity fail to follow through in a culture of de facto segregation. This discrimination has plagued our public schools throughout history.
What about you, sir? Do you think the colored students will show up?
If I got anything to do with it, they won't show up. Well, I think it's a breaking point of the school integration. I just don't feel that they have a right to go to school with it.
The famed Brown v. Board of Education court case explicitly decided that sending students to schools segregated by race is blatantly unconstitutional. However, despite decades of legal action, school segregation is still prevalent in America, especially in St. Louis. Labeled as the 10th most segregated city in America, St. Louis's story has a long history of segregation.
I think if you go back, let's start at the Civil War. St. Louis is part of Missouri, which is a slave state, but we fight for the Union. So we have sort of a conflicted sort of history with segregation early on. So then that leads in the 20s, 30s, and 40s to something called redlining, where basically banks would only give African Americans house loans for houses in certain neighborhoods. And that impact has basically forced St. Louis African Americans to live in North City and North County. St. Louis population is still relatively segregated, so we still see those things today, and then it obviously plays into the whole education program as well.
While many of the legal barriers have been torn down, the impacts are still seen to this day. To address this, the City and County of St. Louis implemented the Voluntary Interdistrict Choice Corporation, or VICC. According to the Parkway VICC liaison, Rocky Talavedra, VICC, quote, manages the St. Louis Student Transfer Program, end quote. Set in place in 1983, its mission is to, quote, increase racially integrated learning opportunities for students. Originally designed to have a finite existence, VICC is set to end in the 2023-24 school year. Although it fosters racial integration, without the program, much of this progress will be undone. Empirically, Parkway's African American population, which currently makes up 15% of the student body, would amount to less than 2% without VICC. Junior Tia Reed and her brother take part in the VICC program. For her and many students like her, the service is invaluable.
I have a brother, and I myself and my brother go here to Parkway West, and it has helped us to branch out to diverse settings and meet new people. I don't like the idea of shutting down because the people that are transferring here, they need this because the city schools aren't as up to par as these schools out here, and I think when we're able to, come out here every day, it allows us to see different settings and new things that we haven't seen before if we were going to a city school.
The diversity brought to our school through its VICC program has brought people together who may have otherwise never met. But with the phasing out of the program, some children will be taken from the people and life that they've been a part of for years. Recent graduate Josh McAllister argues that he would not be who he is today without VICC.
It helps, obviously, keep friends in contact at the same school. It brings a lot of the athletes in from the city that are really good for our schools and our teams. And it's better education than some of the schools could be deep in the city. It means that I just get to see a lot of my friends that are from the city. Taj and his brother AJ, they're just two of the coolest dudes I know. A lot of the other people that come, just some great athletes I've seen, some really smart kids come. I'd say they made my experience here at West just a bit more enjoyable. Me and Taj have known each other since kindergarten, but we didn't really become like good friends until freshman year when we both started doing wrestling, and he's just one of my best friends. He's a brother to me.
For my freshman and sophomore year, I was a part of the program, but this year, Vic kind of stopped supporting me because they said I lived too far out, and yeah, so I've kind of been having to take like a 40-minute drive to school every morning this year. It kind of sucks. Well, I mean, I've been in the VIC program since I was like in kindergarten, so I kind of made like a life at this school, and I think if there wasn't the VIC program, then I would have to probably be in a city school, and it'll be a majority of only people my skin color.
The diversity brought to our schools by VIC can also be invaluable for teachers looking to broaden their students' perspectives.
For the history of St. Louis, I get a good number of African American students who live in the city take the class. And for me, it's great because the county kids sort of live in this West County bubble. So the fact that they get to listen to each other and hear what's going on in their neighborhood does add a lot of diversity and has impacted at least history of St. Louis in a very positive way. I just think that it just opens up students' eyes to a whole other living arrangement. If we didn't have the VIC program, many students would not have African American classmates until possibly college. And so you could go through a K through 12 education environment and have a very homogeneous classroom for all 12 or 13 of those years, whereas that's just not reality. If we can become more together in this classroom, I think that just broadens out for greater society and for the greater good of all.
VIC and the Greater Parkway Transportation System are resources made available to so many. According to Will Rosa, the transportation director for Parkway, there are more than 12,000 children using Parkway's transportation system. However, how we choose to utilize these resources has the potential to change generations of students for the better. Ultimately, what started with Martin Luther King's dream has evolved into one of the defining problems of our generation. The struggle for equality in America is not one consigned to the past, but rather one that chases us into the future. If we hope to have a diverse and compassionate education environment, no alternate solution can be as effective as simply keeping the VIC program until it's truly fulfilled its purpose.
Answers to many of our challenges today can't necessarily be found in our laws. These changes also need to take place in our hearts and in our minds.